Okay, review embargo lifted. Let's talk Gladiator 2. Bruce and what's popping here, guys, and I just got out of the South African premiere of Gladiator 2 over at Empress Palace with our friends United International Pictures. And we had a special guest over there, Dricus du Plessis, joining us to watch the film. The world welterweight champion of UFC, being a South African gladiator, joining us in the crowd and sort of geeing us up for the film was really, really cool. And awesome to see him there interacting with the fans and talking about what the Gladiator film, the initial one and now this one, mean to him as a person. And I think that's a good jumping off point for thoughts on this film. And before I jump into thoughts, don't worry, this review will be spoiler free. Ridley Scott returning to the franchise with a film that arguably is one of the best films of modern times. It is a modern classic. Gladiator, almost perfect. I think a lot of people would be hard pressed to argue that point of view as a film, as a piece of filmmaking. So to come back with a sequel, you do start to get those questions around, is it necessary? Does it justify its own existence? How do you go about doing it? And Russell Crowe's not involved. Can Gladiator exist without Russell Crowe? The answer is a resounding yes. I was one of those cynics going, sequel, here we go. How's this going to work? And probably within the first 5 minutes, all of those fears were allayed. We are tossed back into Ridley Scott's Rome. Make no mistake about it, this is Ridley Scott's Rome. This is his world, his vision of surrealism and hyperrealism that make what is now a franchise so recognizable and such an interesting place to explore, because we have these characters who are operating within a world that we can recognize, but is definitely a notch above. I mean, there's a lot of interactions in this film with animals, a lot of fights with animals in the different arenas, from low arenas all the way up to the Colosseum. And they've gone ahead with those animal scenes and really leaned into that surrealism and that hyperrealism where you can tell, I mean, you see in the trailer, the characters are fighting a baboon, and that baboon is vicious, but if you know baboons really well, you'll look at it and go, there's something not quite right about it, but that makes it a bit more palatable. It makes it, it raises the stakes somewhat. I mean, anybody who knows what it's like to come across a baboon knows how deadly they are, but these are even more frightening. And the same with the rhinos that you've seen in the trailers and the sharks that they use when they fill up the Colosseum with water. We know that Ridley Scott is somebody who is very practical effects forward, and that is something that comes across in the film. When visual effects are used, they are used in a way that heightens the film and leans into that surrealism in a way that doesn't feel world-breaking. It really draws you into the action. It's a really intricate film in terms of the way that it's constructed. It's really telling three stories that, we have three characters. We have Paul Mescal's character, who really is the namesake gladiator in the film. We have Denzel Washington playing a politician and somebody who's risen up and rising through the ranks. And we have Pedro Pascal playing a general. And all three of them are showcasing different themes throughout the film, and I think each one of them is kind of a token character for their theme. We have Mescal playing this character who is vengeance bent and very, very in the spirit of Russell Crowe's character Maximus in the first Gladiator film. We have Denzel Washington's character who's a politician. He's very tactical. He's full of ambition. The film Gladiator and Gladiator 2 now is about going from being a slave all the way up to a gladiator and then finding your freedom. And that's something that the film really explores. And then we have Pedro Pascal, who's dealing with a really sort of conflicted character who's in search of justice. And about halfway through the second act, those arcs start to interact with each other, and they come into conflict with each other. They start butting heads with each other, and we see who's going to come out on top and who's going to complete their mission that they've sort of taken on very early on in the film. One of the big questions out there, and I think it's a valid one, is how do you deal with the legacy of Russell Crowe and the legacy of Maximus going into this film? And that, I must say, is one of the most eloquently handled things I've seen in recent cinema in a very, very long time. The character of Maximus is so iconic. It's almost like, how do you make a gladiator film without Russell Crowe? And the first couple of scenes really pay homage to the previous film. So you can go into this film firstly without having seen Gladiator, without having seen it, heard about it. If you have seen it, I think you're going to pick up on a lot more subtle references and nuances that, as Russell Crowe's character says, Maximus says, what we do in this lifetime echoes through eternity. And this film does brush on that. We sort of jump off 16 years after the death of Marcus Aurelius. And Maximus has obviously died in that time, or well within that time. And there's still whispers about him. There's still legends about it. There's rumors about him. Some of the characters in the film have seen him and saw him fight and were inspired by him, or were maybe taken aback by him. So his whispers and his touches are there throughout the film, and incredibly well handled. Subtle references, subtle nuances, paying respect to his character, and also acknowledging the effect that his character had in the first film on society and where society views him as an archetype moving forward. This is the epitome of a deserved sequel. The cinematography, bar none. The sound design, absolutely incredible. This is the film you have to experience in IMAX with surround sound. There's no other way to experience it. You are thrown into the midst of some of the most intense and brutal fight scenes and battles that I've seen in the last 20 years. I think that as an action epic, this is something we have not seen definitely within the last decade. Ridley Scott has delivered on a level that I don't think we can quite fully comprehend until you've maybe given this film 2 or 3 watchings and maybe watched the previous Gladiator and seen his growth in terms of what he's now able to accomplish with the growth that we've seen in cinema and in filmmaking. A standalone film that will blow you away. If you do not walk out of that cinema going, wow, that was 2.5 hours well spent, then I don't know what to say to you. It is a truly, truly phenomenal film with incredible performances across the board. You got to remember, these actors are stepping into the shoes, literally, of some of the greatest performances, arguably, that we've seen in the modern era. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix in the previous film, Russell Crowe in the previous film, just naming two of the performances. The issue that these actors would have been facing was that they're going to have direct comparisons drawn to them. I think Joseph Quinn did a phenomenal job with the duo that he played. I forget the name of the other gentleman who played there's a dual emperor relationship going on there, but you must remember he's stepping into this role and people are going to directly compare him to Joaquin Phoenix character's performance in the previous film, in the same way that Paul Mescal is going to be compared as a gladiator to Russell Crowe. These actors had huge shoes to fill coming into it, and the film felt fresh, it felt new, it didn't feel like a retelling, it felt like a natural continuation of where Ridley Scott envisioned this universe going. It is a very brutal and bloody movie, but Ridley Scott has pulled it off in the most incredible way. I think we're going to hear awards buzz around this film. I think Paul Mescal has cemented himself as a leading man in this film. Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn, Denzel Washington deliver phenomenal performances. This is definitely a case of Paul Mescal stepping up as a lead, for sure, but the ensemble is supporting him so strongly that there is not a single... Connie Nielsen is phenomenal in this movie. There is not a single missed beat in terms of performance, in terms of script writing, in terms of action sequences, choreography, cinematography, sound design. The sound design, I don't want to get into too much of it because I could give away some spoilers here, but the sound design and whoever was doing the Foley for this was absolutely sublime. So if you haven't already, I cannot recommend going to see this film enough. Let me know in the comments down below if you have seen the film, what you think about it. Let me know what you are looking forward to in the film if you haven't seen it yet. And if you haven't already and you enjoyed this content, please go ahead, hit that like button, leave us a rating if you're listening to us over on Spotify, and join the What's Popping family. We do a ton of interviews on the channel, we do celebrity interviews, we do film coverage, and all things pop culture here on What's Popping. So if that sounds good to you, make sure to join the family, and I will see all of you in the next video.